Hey, welcome to another episode of Sparking Innovation from Provisio, the largest Salesforce implementation partner for human services. I'm Tom Moran, here to inspire nonprofits and government agencies to drive change in their communities by embracing change in their organizations. We are your go-to partner to develop data strategies that automate tedious processes, power AI, and unveil new insights that fuel better decisions. And we also offer advisory services to help organizations with strategic planning and change management. So check out our website at provisiopartners.com if you're interested in how we can help your organization become more efficient and effective. So one of our great client success stories is Urban Alchemy. It's an organization based in San Francisco, which takes a unique approach to tackling homelessness and mental illness and addiction, actually by employing formerly incarcerated people. Through a custom Salesforce implementation, Provisio digitized and streamlined the entire client intake process and case management process. And we also provided innovative new tools like a bed visualizer to help manage bed assignments. Now, as Urban Alchemy expands to cities like Austin, Texas, and Portland, Oregon, and Los Angeles, those same Provisio technology solutions are being implemented at those new locations too. Joining me now is Mike Anderer, Chief Systems Engineer at Urban Alchemy, as well as Craig Maki, Chief Strategy Officer here at Provisio. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for the invitation. It's a delight to be here.
Thanks, Tom.
So, Mike, why don't you just start off, tell us more about Urban Alchemy's theory of change and its growth in these other cities.
Sure, absolutely. So just briefly, Urban Alchemy thinks about ourselves as our mission as 1, 2, and 3. Our primary mission is to provide meaningful work and economic mobility for men and women who are coming home from long-term incarceration. We do that in 2 ways: by transforming people and urban spaces, and we do that in using 3 different kinds of program, what we call house communities, safe communities, and clean communities. In this particular, in our partnership with Provisio, it's really in the house community area in our interim housing locations. We operate usually for city and county governments, tiny home villages, safe sleeping villages, and safe parking facilities, and in some cases, a couple of traditional semi-congregate shelters as well. Really, what we harness is the social and emotional intelligence from the lived experience of our employees, from really a lifetime of work on themselves. So someone who has been incarcerated for a long period of time and might even be coming off of a life sentence, they've done a lot of inner work. And so if they've been able to qualify for parole off of a life sentence, that means that they've really have become transformed human beings. And then Urban Alchemy has provided a vehicle for those men and women to really use those gifts in the service of their neighbors and really meet people where they are with extreme empathy, extreme compassion, where we're really able to transform lives.
And so speaking of meeting people where they are, I mean, most of the Urban Alchemy team is actually in the field working with clients where they're at, right, on the street. So given that, what role does technology play in helping provide on-site support and care?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different, in our Safe Communities programs, we have folks who are out on the street who are engaging with people, and they are also using technology on those engagements. When a city or a county partner refers a client to us to be enrolled in one of our interim housing sites, that's really where the technology solution comes into play. One of the interesting things about the unhoused spaces is that there are federal requirements for data collection and data tracking. Each county is required to have their own system where all service providers across a county are using the same system, so there can be a coherent tracking of data for individuals within a particular county. Unfortunately for Urban Alchemy and for those systems, that's essentially our employees putting data into somebody else's database. We don't always have great visibility into that data, into those countywide systems. We don't have ownership of those data. Sometimes when a client exits our site, we lose access to their data because they're no longer one of our clients. And of course, now Urban Alchemy is in 4 states and 7 major metropolitan areas. And so we're in 6 different county HMIS systems. Those are called Homeless Management Information Systems. So Urban Alchemy was really looking for a way to provide visibility and ownership of our own data for our own clients so that we could really map out and learn from really the pathway to housing that our clients are taking so that we can really tell the story of our clients, that we can tell the story of our organization and the success of our organization, across counties and across states. We really believe that this consolidated visualization of our data is really going to provide a lot of learning that a lot of our city partners are going to be interested in because it's provides across diverse geographies and regions. So I think it's going to be very helpful to the whole service industry.
If you put on your remembering hat to the times before you had the Salesforce technologies and you were doing the things, can you remember what you thought your pain points were that you were going to solve for when you implemented the technology? And I'm curious, did you actually solve for them? And what else did you solve for that you didn't recognize you could now that you're along the way on your journey? Like you've got some time under your feet in this process.
Yeah. So that's a great question. So the pain point that we were really trying to solve for was to get better visibility into what our client outcomes were at our interim housing sites so that we could visualize that, that we had a sense of, unique clients served, what our exits look like. It's called an exit when someone kind of exits to temporary or permanent housing from one of our locations. So that's really, and so we've been able to get that. We have better visibility across all of our sites that we didn't have before. I think what we've learned in the process, or what was unanticipated, particularly because we're in different regions, our sites have grown up and are slightly, there's a unique flavor to each region. San Francisco is different than Los Angeles, which is different than Austin, which is different than Portland. And there are practices and things that we've learned in each of those regions that, because we're now building a data collection tool that tracks the services that we provide to our clients across all of those regions, we're bringing the best practices from each of those regions all together. So we're really, it's setting us up to learn from each other across all of our cities. So we've created a team, an interstate team of interim housing leaders and experts who are able to share best practices and learn from each other. We're able to ramp up and open sites and get sites up and running more quickly. The training, so the collaboration across the organization has really been beneficial to our staff and also to our clients.
And so what are some of those things that you're starting to learn with all that data?
So what we're learning is really what are and this is really as we collect more data over a longer period of time, what we're looking to identify using some of the tools within Salesforce and with Provisio's help is what are some of the key success factors in a client's journey to housing. So in the field, there's a few things that are best practices out there. Are folks document ready, it's called? Do folks have identification? Do they have a copy of their social security card? All these kinds of things. And we can kind of check the box on that. but we believe because of the volume of clients we're housing, by the end of the first quarter of 2025, we're going to be housing almost 2,000 people a night across 4 states. And
Wow.
so we're going to be able to start to consolidate the services provided in Salesforce language. It's the benefits that they receive. And we're going to look to see what the patterns of a particular client's or client profile journey is. So someone who exits to permanent housing, what are the normal benefits that they've received at what time and at what dosage that enabled them to get housed within a particular time period.
That's the cool stuff. That's the front lines of the predictive and prescriptive thing that we're all chasing. And that's super
right.
Cool to hear that you're going to be dipping your toes in that water, and it'll be fun to see what kind of learnings come out of that. That's really cool. What advice would you, well, before I ask that question, and you started to get into it, and one of the most fascinating things I have ever learned from you, and I'm sure I'll learn more as the weeks and months go on, but when you were talking about harnessing those best practices, there was also this nuance that I think really sets you apart from a lot of folks that I've encountered when it comes to embracing this idea of scalability in what you take and what you replicate versus what you choose to learn, because every environment. And you were telling me a story about the folks coming out of the LA prison system are different than folks coming out of other prison systems, and what you had to learn while embracing that emotional intelligence that they learned while there to be able to use on the outside. Can you talk a little more about that? Because I think it's just brilliant as far as matching that intuition of the community and the environment with the best practices that you're learning.
Yeah, so in terms of our kind of Urban Alchemy's mission, and really Urban Alchemy is not just your average workforce development nonprofit that provides employment for folks coming home from prison. Urban Alchemy is a community of men and women and leaders who are formerly incarcerated. So that's the center of who we are. While that's not my personal experience, I'm one of the few leaders within Urban Alchemy who's not formerly incarcerated. One of our co-founders is formerly incarcerated. All of our directors of operations in all of our cities are all formerly incarcerated. That's just who we are. That's part of what makes us successful. What we also know is every state has a different carceral system. They have their own culturals of their carceral system, and that impacts folks who are moving through that system. We just moved to Alabama and opened our first program. We are on the calendar to open up our first interim housing site in Birmingham sometime by the end of 2025. So each state has its own kind of culture of its carceral system that impacts the folks who've gone through that system. And so the skills are slightly different as they come home. What we've been able to do is to kind of identify what some of those key skills are across the different states and kind of bake it into our training. And essentially what we do is we don't really essentially train people in skills. Essentially, people are coming home from prison with the skills, and what we provide is a language to help them understand that experience and the skills that they gained and how to apply those skills in the circumstance to help our unhoused neighbors. So that's some of the really cool stuff I think that Urban Alchemy is doing that's enabling us to really provide a high quality service and really transform people's lives. I think the other thing that I'd really say about that's really important to Urban Alchemy, that's very much a part of this data story for us. If you're not out there telling your story, people will make up a story about you. And so this data this data journey for us is really about Urban Alchemy being able to tell our story better, to be out on the leading edge of providing high quality services to our unhoused neighbors. And we want to be able to tell that story using data, as well as the stories of our employees and of our clients individually. So, so that's super important to us. So that's why we want to own our data, so that we can own our story and tell our story better. Because if we don't, people are going to be making up stuff about us.
And so how does owning your own story, how has that actually benefited Urban Alchemy in terms of securing funding and just general PR and your general image in the city?
So I can tell you what our experience is in moving to our most recent expansion that we've just completed. Usually, because Urban Alchemy is a different organization, because we're founded and led by formerly incarcerated men and women. We're also a Black-centered, Black-led organization. The 85% of our employee base are men and women of color. 60% of our employee base are Black and African American. So frequently, when we come into a new environment, people don't know who we are, and they say, "Oh, formerly incarcerated, minority-centered organization." There's a little bit of a cognitive dissonance that people don't really get that we're able to do something, and they're a little suspicious. And so what's happened over time as we've been able to tell our story, and in each city that we've moved into, there's some resistance when we first come in. It's like, "Oh, you're not really going to be able to do that. You can't do that." Or, your employee base isn't qualified to do this work. What we've found now, because we've been able to tell our story, because we've we're in multiple cities now, people are inviting us to come in now, and we're not receiving the same kind of initial, side eye saying, "Hey, who are you? Who are you again?" So that's really what's helping. It's nice not to get the side eye so much anymore.
I got to imagine that less side eye is never a bad thing.
That's right.
So tell us, if you were to reflect back, and maybe it's not just your own reflections, maybe it's things you've heard throughout the organization. If you were to look back on your journey and kind of what you've done with really making an organizational commitment to Salesforce, data, practices, documentation, and all of the things that go into getting the outcomes that you talked about, of being able to own your own data, telling your own story. You got to do stuff to be able to do that. What advice would you give other nonprofits in a similar situation to yourself about a year and a half ago that are in the homelessness, mental illness, addiction world? They have an organization, and how do you get going? What would you give them advice on how to get started?
I think what's really most important is to not be afraid of data, to not shy away from essentially leveling up your own experience and your own skill and your own thinking about data-driven decision-making, or setting real clear outcomes and targets for yourself. It doesn't take away from your ability to provide empathetic service to your clients. And I think another one of the hidden secrets of doing a technology-driven and data-driven approach is when you start to invite your employees into this journey, it changes their engagement with the work itself. And just by engaging them in and giving them visibility into their own work and work across a particular site or across an organization. They see that, oh, that meal that I gave out, or that one-on-one that I had, or that course that I taught, I can see that in the journey of our clients. I can see it counted. Oh, we gave out, 300 bottles of water last week, while, on the sidewalk outside of our interim housing site, and we start to see those impacts. It starts to drive behavior in the right direction. We have X number of positive engagements with our clients. It starts to actually drive the behavior of the whole organization towards more focused effort in the right direction. It gets everybody kind of pulling the oars in the same direction.
So I think sometimes, and I suspect I know the answer to this, but you can't improve what you don't measure, but you also can't ignore what you document and measure. And there's that accountability sort of issue of, if we do it, we can't ignore it, and who's responsible. How did you guys embrace that conversation? Or because it sounds like you got people to a place where now they appreciate data as a way to improve rather than a way to punish, or the more destructive way of holding people accountable.
Yeah, this is what I would say, and I'm probably stealing this from some of my experience as an educator too, that I brought into this space, is it's important to be very clear on what it is that you're counting. So if all you're asking your employees to do is you're driven by, I'll call them the negative measures. How many incidents do we have? Or how many medical emergencies? Or how many what we call inviting space interventions do you have to have? Or how many trash bags did you fill up? Or how many needles were collected in the bathroom? If that's all you're counting, then that's all your employees are going to be looking for. They're going to be looking for more trash. They're going to keep their eyes out for incidents happening. But if you're counting things like positive engagements or participation in workshops and events, those engagements that are a little bit less, those things that are really positive metrics, all of a sudden, that's what employees are engaging in. They're looking to do more positive engagements. They're not just looking to pick up more trash off the floor as they're walking through a site. So when you're counting trash bags as they're walking through the site, their eyes are going to be down on the ground looking for trash. If you're measuring positive engagements, their head's going to be up saying hello to everybody they walk by. So it makes a difference in the outcomes.
Thank you for sharing that. That's words to live by.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Mike, this was a fantastic conversation. Really appreciate you joining the show today. And Craig, thank you for your contribution as well.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
You.
Thanks, Mike. Great to see you.
Great to see you as well. Thank you.
Don't forget, Provisio's Shelter Solutions include a bed visualizer, guest IDs, and digital barcodes to simplify check-ins, and case management tools that easily track guest special needs as well as meals. These technology solutions ensure every guest receives the care and support they need, while also simplifying service delivery and impact reporting for staff. So if you're a shelter nonprofit and are interested in how Provisio Salesforce Solutions can help you, visit us at provisiopartners.com/shelter, and you can subscribe to this podcast to catch the next episode of Sparking Innovation. Thank you so much for listening.